I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our school discipline system. So you guys have probably all read the school discipline policy, but this is more about how we actually go about the nitty-gritty of preparing our students for our classroom and school culture. This is all based on a guy named Matt Whitling, who teaches out in Idaho. He's worked at a lot of classical schools. He sort of put this framework together that we use here at school. And we think of it in three parts, and that's teaching, training, and then blessing and cursing. So how it works is before any students arrive for the school year, we start thinking in early August with all the teachers about what our classrooms should look like. We, as an administration, think about what the school culture should look like, and each individual teacher starts thinking about their individual classrooms. That's when we start setting classroom rules. This year we did it all together at teacher training through a workshop where we went through and tried to define what do we want to grow in our students, what should our classrooms look like, and began to put those into actual classroom rules that are understandable by students. Then when the first day arrives and students start showing up, that very first day we begin the teaching process of this. I should have said earlier, this is based loosely on Exodus, where God gives the law, right? He teaches the law through Moses, through giving the 10 Commandments. Then he trains in how he explains how the tabernacle should look. He explains how they ought to behave. He gives them chances to understand. And then the blessings and curses follow in Judges and Samuel and the rest of Jewish history. But that teaching for us begins on that first day of school, and teaching is a lot of explaining and modeling. So talking to students about what the classroom rules mean, talking to them about what expectations we have for their behavior, talking to them about what it should look like when you go to the bathroom and what the rules are for the number of pumps of soap you use and what it looks like when you go out to recess and come back from recess and how you should sit and where your pencil should be and all those things. We talk about what is expected. And it involves a lot of modeling, right? Maria and Sydney and all of our younger teachers, right? They act it out, they make it funny, they make it enjoyable, right? They start to practice a little bit in that first week. For older students, we talk about what would it look like to employ the golden rule in this situation, what about at recess, what about at lunch, what does it look like in all these different situations. So that's the teaching portion that lasts for really the first week of school. After that, we get into the training portion, which we're just coming out of right now. It lasts 4 to 5 weeks, and that involves a ton of repetition. So Maria takes her first and second graders out in the middle of the day as a break between classes, and they run out to recess and pretend to be at recess, and then we blow the whistle 3 times, and they run back in and line up and practice, right? We walk out to dismissal in the middle of the day. They're not actually being dismissed, but we practice lining up in a straight line, raising your hand when you see your parents, not running out to the cars, things like that. And we practice, right? For older students, we practice every opportunity we get, where I might be in the bathroom with older students and say, hey, how can we leave this bathroom better than we found it, right? I see that we've got a gym uniform on the floor. Let's practice, what should that look like? Where should we put our backpack if it's not going to be on the floor, right? When we're passing out papers and a student does a poor job at that, we go back and we practice. When a student blurts in class or speaks out of turn, right, we go back and we practice. What should that have looked like? What would the respectful thing have been to behave in, or what would have been the respectful behavior there? So we practice and train and practice and train. After that stage, which we're coming out of right now, comes the blessing and cursing. And that is when students really begin to be held accountable for what we've trained them to do. So we don't expect them to come in with habits that are already perfectly formed to our school culture. We train that in, but once we're confident that they understand what's expected of them, that they're able to do what's expected of them, and that they know in each situation what they ought to do, then we begin to hold them accountable. This is when names start to go on the board, or you start to get moved from one color to another, or you get a warning and then you might stay in for recess, or your parents might get an email saying, hey, the student had an issue in class today, and it's when consequences really begin to come. So the most important part of this section, or this discipline system, is the training section. We think about it a lot beforehand, but it's that training piece that really turns it from just a rule that a teacher has given you into a habit. And training doesn't stop when the blessing and cursing begins. We continue that throughout the whole year, whether we're adding a new rule or just practicing something we ought to have known already. But through that system, we're able to create a school culture that fits with what our school virtues are, joy and grit. That's it.